What causes addiction? Why are we addicts? All of us, we're all addicted to something. We're all addicted to certain things. But why do we become addicts? Why do we become addicted to things? What is addiction? And why is it so important to talk about this, discuss it, and share it? I feel that this is a very important subject personally, and in this episode, that's what we are going to be uncovering. We're going to be uncovering the reason for addiction in our lives. Now, addiction can be both a positive thing and a negative thing depending on, well, the type of addiction and also the perspective one has on what it is that they're doing. In essence, the reason for most all addictions is very simple. It's a simple answer. Now, before I get into this, I want to preface that I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm none of those things. But I have years and years of study, and I've also helped many people overcome certain addictions. And there's reasons that this is the case. Now, you can talk about addiction in multitudes of ways. There's, drug addictions like alcohol and cocaine, heroin, you name the drug, there's addictions to those. There's also sexual addictions. There's relationship addictions. There's addictions to chewing, biting, tearing your nails. There's addictions to all sorts of different things in our lives. Now, there's small ones, there's big ones, and there's everything in between. But why do we become addicted to something? What is the process? And as I share this information with you, I want you to do something for yourself. During this process of me sharing with you about addictions and the causation of them, I want you to think about how true it is, whether it's for you or for someone else. And think of, when you think of the causation, it's going to expose where the addiction started and why the addiction started. And it's so interesting to me when this is done the right way. You see, science or the medical community, they like to put labels on things because then over time they can treat something. And in doing so, it makes it easier for them to make this thing they call money. We all use this thing, but it's a device to make more money. If I call your addiction, I call it something like a disease, now I have a treatable methodology that I can come up with and apply to that disease and make money over the course of time of you having this thing called a disease. Now, I'm not telling you and saying that addiction couldn't be a disease, but I want you to understand the causation of this thing called addiction. And when you unravel that, when you open that up, it actually brings new light to this thing that we call addiction. And that's the crazy part about it. That's the exciting part about what it is that we're going to be discussing here. So what causes addiction? What causes us to do something? It's crazy to think about, but what causes us to become addicted to something, like overeating is a good example of this, the reason is because we don't want to feel an emotion. We want to suppress an emotional feeling that we are having, and so we chase something that's different than that. And it brings up different emotions for us. So overeating is one of those things where we would rather feel the feeling of being full than feel the feeling of being scared, being frightened, or being hurt. And when you uncover that, now you can start to look at, okay, why did I start this? When did this start for me? Was it a fight with my parents, or was it, you can diagnose, you can go back and see where the instance started for you for overeating is the example. Another one would be like biting fingers or stuttering, things like that. We do these things because we do them in avoidance of or to bring attention to. And it's crazy because in essence, we're bringing attention to it by creating this addiction, by creating this process or this habit that we do all the time. Addiction is really just habits done that are perceived as bad or negative. And the crazy part is it doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to continue in the cycle. And once you realize that you're doing something, the realization of you doing it can help you conquer the addiction to it. And that's the exciting part about talking about the process and the reason why we become addicted to things. So it's an avoidance of a feeling in place of another feeling. And so we find that other feeling. And in finding that other feeling, sometimes it's drug use, because now we're on a high, some kind of high, whatever that high happens to be. And it's far away, far separated from the original emotions that we started to feel. And so that's why we picked it up. Like drinking is one of those things, alcoholism, right? We talk about it, alcoholism, the disease known as alcoholism. We go towards that vice because it's an avoidance of another emotional state that we could naturally go through and progress through, but we want to avoid feeling it for whatever that reason happens to be. And the crazy part about it is so much of our lives and so much of the problems in our lives can be solved when we actually face that emotion, when we actually sit in that emotion. Now, it doesn't mean you have to let it conquer you. It's just a matter of letting your body feel it and asking yourself, why am I feeling this? What is this doing for me? Like, emotions are there for good reason. They enable us to perceive things that we can't perceive consciously or cognitively. And only in asking cognitive questions while we're feeling something can we actually process that information and let it internalize and possibly even just release it altogether. And it's crazy to see when someone takes an emotion that they've been avoiding and actually feeling it and process the emotional feelings and have a conversation with that emotion, and even with someone else or even alone, and watching as their addiction seemingly dissolves, and then the want or the drive to go towards what it is that they've wanted and what they've created this addiction for dissipates. And sometimes it just leaves altogether. But most people, we don't look at it that way. We don't see it that way. And the reason why we don't see it is because it's a feeling, right? You can't see a feeling. And so as the emotion comes into us, we're like, okay, what do I do now? Okay, I don't want to feel this emotion, and so I'm going to reach for something outside of that emotion that's going to replace that emotion with a totally another feeling. And I want you to ask yourself, does what I'm saying make sense to you? If this makes sense to you, then why wouldn't you share this with more people? Why wouldn't you tell more people about this? To me, it's a simple thing, but it's a difficult thing in the way that we deal with it, because we would rather point out we have a problem with drinking as opposed to saying, you don't have a problem with drinking, you have a problem with feeling emotions. And if you decided to just feel emotions, you wouldn't be forced or wanting to drink nearly as much, and you could then curb that drinking. And now 1 drink suffices, or 2 drinks instead of 8 bottles, what have you. So instead of saying, here's your problem, saying, there's further, you have to look deeper into it. Yes, it is an addiction, and you know the addiction's wrong, you know the addiction's not right, and you know the addiction's not helpful. But calling it an addiction as opposed to saying, there's an emotional state here that you're not wanting to feel, what is it? And when you can go into that emotional state, when you can lead them or help carry them through that emotional state and say, hey, it's going to be okay. Just let the feeling come. Feel the feeling and talk the feeling out. Why are you feeling that feeling? What does that feeling make you like? What are you afraid of with that feeling? Why is that feeling so scary to you? And talk them through it. You can walk them through this process. You can do this yourself. Find someone that you trust to talk about. And instead of grabbing for that thing, once you realize that this is an addiction you have, and you realize that there's a causation to it, and as soon as that emotion starts to trigger in you, which triggers usually the want for drinking or food or whatever the addiction is, right? You can say, aha, I know it. I'm going through the process. And you can pick up the phone and you can call someone you trust. You can work with someone you care about. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to someone who can help you walk through the process so you don't actually have to grab that bottle anymore or grab that carton of food, whatever it happens to be. And so you can actually deal with the problems in your life. And once you conquer those things, you can transform your life like that. But you have to want it. And people also don't realize this. Once again, if you call it a disease, well, then I can make it long-term and treatable, and I can make lots of money on you. To me, it's not about that. Remember, only one you need. I'm not the only one you need. you are. This is about removing obstacles from your life so you can actually lead it better in the way that you want to lead it. Not the way I want to, which is to make money off you. It's the way you want to, where you get to spend your money how you want. And hopefully it's not on addiction anymore. It's actually on something of purpose. And to me, that's the crazy part about it. It doesn't have to be difficult, but yet we want to make it difficult for whatever reason. Now, all I can say now is, or do, is ask you, does this make sense to you? Does this feel right, what I'm sharing with you? I don't know. I don't know your perspective. I would like to hear from you. So if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to comment below. If you're listening to this in the podcast, make sure to leave feedback. I'd like to know what you think. But the idea is very simple when it comes to addiction. Addiction is the avoidance of an emotional feeling, and whatever the causation of that is, you just want to avoid that feeling. And we're all of us are susceptible to this, and all of us have addictions. All of us, whether they're good ones or bad ones, we're talking about the negative ones here for the avoidance of. So use this information. And if this has been helpful to you, if this is something that you feel has been useful and helpful, make sure to share this with other people. Let other people know that this information exists so then we can spread the message. Now, once again, I'm not saying that it's not a disease, but what I'm saying is that when you treat the causation of something, disease doesn't have to occur. So that being said, it's David Dubé with Only One You Need. It's time that you be the person you're meant to be. Believe in all that you're capable of and become more than you thought imaginable. I look forward to catching you in the next episode. Take care.